Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final event of our European and regional project, Immagino l'Europa così. Welcome to the students that are here with me on my back, to the teachers, to the administrator of the schools, and welcome also to our European partners that today follow us by connection, by the web, especially to the city of Bergerac from France, to the city of Schwäbisch Gmünd in Germany, to the municipality of Daugavpils in Latvia, and to the city of Bolesławiec in Poland. We met each other some months ago for another event. In this time, my pronunciation, Latvian and Polish pronunciation, didn't get better, but anyway, we are very happy to be here with you, at least with these tools, virtual tools. Today, as I said, is our final event of a path built together on some important topics and issues as democracy and participation, sustainability, green and issue. About these topics, the students made some lessons and some meetings thanks to our Youth European Federation here in the municipality of Faenza. We are very glad today that we can speak and talk about it. I want to thank, first of all the organization, especially the person that made this event possible here from the municipality of Faenza and from the other municipality, and especially to Andrea Savorani Neri, a journalist, photographer, a friend of the municipality of Faenza that today I represent in name of our measure Massimo Isola, that will help us in discussing and talk about the issues, as I said before. It's my pleasure today to greet you all, to thank you for all the road worked together along this project in order to keep on our collaboration also in the future. So all my greetings in the name of the municipality of Faenza. Thank you again, and have a nice morning, have a nice day, and thank you to everyone.
So let's start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Savorani Neri. I'm a photographer and a journalist, but I'd like to think to myself as a student among students today. Actually, I'm probably the most stressed one within you all because I have to speak in English as I'm living in France with this almost the last 20 years. You will be clementi, you will be good with me with my English pronunciation. But what I like to do with you today, let's say my hope is that you will leave from this room, physical room, and from a virtual room for our friends from Latvia, Poland, Germany, and France, if I correctly understand, with very few answers and a lot of questions. The focus of our thinking and sharing together today will be information, energy, and democracy. And we will try to discuss about these issues together, try to put some thinking together, and try to stretch, try to underline the link between information, energy, and democracy. Basically, the reason I am here is just that I can offer you some of my experience. So I will tell you some story that I've crossed in my personal, professional experience. Marco, you can go with the first slide. So I will start with, no, this is the second one. Okay. Well, we start with the pictures, which is quite, I can say, mysterious. We don't really know, you don't really know what is this picture about, where's the place. We will discover it going on in our discussion. But I will start with three quotes. Three quotes from different authors. And the first one is a quote about, I would say, the concept of information itself. I will try to read slowly and in a clear way, but you can also follow this passage in the slide. You see a picture. It's a picture of a Belgian radio technician working on a radio during the Second World War. Technology has brought upon us the most terrible curse, preventing us from escaping the present for even a moment. Past generations, in time of catastrophe, had the possibility of taking refuge in solitude. Instead, we were reserved for having to learn and share every event in the same hour, in the same minute, wherever it occurs on the terrestrial sphere. However far I went from Europe, its destiny followed me. One night, when I arrived in the state of Pernambuco in Brazil, I saw a newspaper with the news of the bombing of Barcelona and the shooting of a Spanish friend, with whom I had spent happy hours a few months earlier. In Texas, all of a sudden, I heard a voice swearing and shouting in German. A traveling companion had, without knowing it, picked up a German radio station, and it was my turn to listen to Hitler's violent speech as I crossed the great Texas plain. There was no way to escape, neither at night nor during the day. I was always forced to think with torturing anguish of Europe and especially Austria. So, who's speaking? The author is called Stefan Zweig. He was Austrian Jewish, and he was born at the end of the 19th century. It's in Vienna. It's probably one of the most flourishing era in the human history. It was a city full of culture, full of exchange, full of people arriving from every part of Europe. And then what happened? He was a witness. He saw the disaster of Europe with the arriving of the First World War, and then after the war, the rising of Nazism and fascism, and then the Second World War. So he was a famous writer. His novels were translated in 40 languages, and he was known all over the world. He finally escaped to London the first time, and then he fled to South America. And he spent the last days of his life between Brazil and Argentina. And he ended up his life in 1942. He committed suicide with his second wife. And he left this book, which is called The World of Yesterday, Memories of a European. And this book is an autobiographic book, so it's a story of his own life, but at the same time, this book is the history of Europe crossing this dramatic period within the end of the 19th century until the Second World War. So basically what Stefan Zweig is telling us in this passage, he is shocked and I would say frightened by the fact that wherever he goes, can be Brazil, it can be Texas, he's on the other side of the Pacific, of the Atlantic Ocean, but he is reached by information. At least once a day, even if he doesn't want, he can hear or read news from the old world, from Europe, which is devastated by the war. So I think that you all understand the reason why I start with this quote. If you compare the situation of Stefan Zweig 70 years ago with our situation today, I think that all of you, everybody, wake up and go to sleep with this object in our hand. And this object, a mobile phone, it's a window to the world through which we can have information not every day, not every hour, but the second something happened all over the world, we are aware of it, we know about it. And this instrument, mobile phone, and in a more general way, internet technologies, have changed the way we consume information in a very radical way. On one side, there are still ways of transmitting information in a traditional way, for example, newspaper or television, or even newspaper on internet. On the other side, I presume, but later on you will answer one of our questions. On the other side, there is a second way to share information today, which is social network. You all receive information through the social network. And the big misunderstanding nowadays is that a lot of people consider the social network as a way of being informed. It is not like this, it's different. Social network and internet can be a vehicle for information. Later on, we will try to think about the difference between a rumor and an information. The second, maybe you can hear far the Italian national song coming from Faenza Square. So the first quote was about information. We try to use these quotes, these sentences, as small brick that we use to build our thinking together. The second quote is about energy. The picture you can see on the screen is a picture from a Canadian photographer. He's called Edward Burtynsky, and the picture is taken in Shanghai, in China. It represents a landscape, an industrial landscape with a coal power station. The sentence and the passage that I'm going to read is from an astrophysician, French-Canadian, Hubert Reeves. He said, "The world's energy consumption today is equivalent to the energy consumption provided by some 13,000 nuclear reactors constantly operating." You have to know that more or less a nuclear reactor is capable of producing the energy necessary for 1 million people. So let's imagine that today, 13,000 nuclear reactors, if they would work all the time, night and days, they're producing the energy for human beings on Earth. But this consumption is constantly increasing, meaning every day we tend to consume more and more energy. And it's increasing by a factor of 10 every 100 years. It means that every century we are consuming 10 times more energy comparing with the previous century. Unlike the human population tends to stabilize. Energy consumption shows no sign of slowing down. It means that the human population, nowadays we are around 7 billion people on Earth. All the statistics let us understand that we won't be more than 10 billion people. So the human population tends to stabilize, but the energy consumption grows and grows and grows. And our astrophysician said, at the current rate, at this speed of energy consumption, in 400 years, the energy consumed would be equivalent to all the energy sent by the sun to our planet. In 15 centuries, it would be equivalent to all the energy emitted by the sun since the beginning of time. And 11 centuries later, 1,100 years later on, it would be equivalent to all the energy emitted by our galaxy. It means that we goes on like this, in some 1,000 years, we would need to live as human beings with the same amount of energy produced by the entire galaxy we're living in. Of course, the introduction, these passages from Hubert Reeves, it's supposed to tell us something. We cannot go on consuming that amount of energy forever. That's the idea, of course. And we go now to the third quote, which is, so I started reading you something about information, then something about energy, and now I'm going to read you something about democracy in general. Some thoughts about democracy in general. What I'm going to read is a quote from a guy, a French intellectual called Alexis de Tocqueville. He is one of the most important philosopher and political analyst in the modern history. And what he has done at the middle of the 19th century, he traveled to the most important place where modern democracy was growing up, was showing up, United States of America, okay? There has been a revolution, and the new democracy in America was born. So he went there to study the situation and trying to understand what that kind of democracy was. And he came back with a lot of ideas, a very big book, very interesting. So now we need to simplify a lot, but there is one concept that is very, very important and very popular, the one I'm going to read you. Democracies are naturally inclined to concentrate all social power in the hands of legislative bodies. What are legislative bodies? Are the parliament, the Senate, the government. Here we are in a municipality, the councillor, etc. These bodies represent the power that emanates directly from the people and are therefore the bodies that must embody its almighty power. Okay, legislative body, like the governments, tend to concentrate all the power coming from the people. We can therefore see an habitual tendency for legislative bodies to concentrate all kinds of authorities in their hands. This concentration of power, on one hand, is detrimental to good governance, and on the other, creates a tyranny of the majority. The concept of tyranny of the majority is, let's say, the most important concept expressed by Alexis de Tocqueville, and it's the one that we, in the Western world, all try to keep in mind very strongly, because the risk that democracy is what? It's we are all together and the majority take the decision for everybody else. So the risk seen 1.5 centuries ago by Alexis de Tocqueville was that this kind of mechanism bring us to a sort of tyranny of the majority. We are inclined to see this risk only for countries far away. For example, think about China. What's the exactly name of China? Democratic Republic of China. We tend to think that this kind of problems occurs only in tyranny and places where there is no choice, no democracy. But in fact, the risk of transforming our democracy in a sort of tyranny of majority is real for everybody. Just aside this quote, you can also see a picture that is, this picture is from a photographer called Taryn Simon. She is Belarusian of origin, but she's American. She's an American citizen. She lives in New York. And that picture is probably one of the most important of her thought about the relationship between power, energy, and democracy. The picture is a metaphor. If you see the picture, it can slightly seems like the United States geography, okay, the territory of the United States. But what are, much concretely, what are all these black points? This picture is actually taken upside down in a nuclear facility. So these points, these black points, are the carbon, the source of energy of a nuclear reactor that are staying under, let's say, for simplify, underwater to be controlled. So the invitation of Taryn Simons, it's a thought about the relationship between production of energy and the democratic system. Okay, so now from the third quote, I try to make a step back, a very, very big step back. I've been lately fascinated by this new change that you probably know better than me in Google Maps. Now you can go so far from the maps you're looking at that you can actually go outside Earth, our planet, and see the position of Earth in the galaxy in relationship with the sun. And then you can also choose to see our planet, other planets, Mars, and so on. So I take the excuse of this picture, which means for me, let's see at the big picture, let's see the big frame, to give floor to you. And I'm proposing that we, as good hosts, we start sharing our thought together with our friends from Latvia, the farthest one, and then we will skip to Poland, and then to Germany, and then we come back here in Faenza, Emilia-Romagna, Italy. So It's 10:25. If we make a short sharing of thoughts from Latvia, I think that our friends from Latvia have prepared something to show to us, and then we pass the ground, pass the floor one to each other. So, good morning, Latvia. If you have a short, I think that you have a short presentation to share with us about the concept we are talking about. Am I right? Can you hear me?
I'm from Poland.
Okay. So we have, well, if you want to start, I think that your teacher shared some question with you.
Yes.
Did you choose to answer to some of that question?
Can I
Lena?
answer to the difference between information and a rumor?
Indeed, you can. You're welcome.
Okay, so I believe that a rumor is something that was spread around that maybe someone didn't want it to come out, and information is something that was confirmed and it was released by the press, so everyone should have known about it. And it's true. A rumor could also be true, but it could also not be true at the same time, but we don't know.
Thank you, Lena.
Thank you.
It's not absolutely clear when we speak, so let's try to speak slowly and loudly. But thank you for your sharing, Lena. I would underline, first of all, one word that Lena pronounced, which is through. Then we will think about it later. I prefer that now we share with each other, and then I will go back talking to you later. So we can now go to Latvia. La Lettonia. If they are connected with us. Here we go. Good morning.
Sorry, I happen to have been muted. I believe there was a mistake yet again because I'm from Poland as well. Yeah, so there's some sort of misunderstanding
Poland
here,
as well.
apparently.
Ok.
Yep.
So quindi dobbiamo andare invece in Lituania, in Lettonia.
Yeah.
Good morning. Who's from Latvia?
It's us.
Raise your hand. Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
No.
Can you hear us?
If I'm not wrong, you have prepared something to share with us.
Yes. And can you see it?
Allora, Andrea, noi riusciamo a vedere la loro presentazione? So you have to share it with us.
Yes.
Can you do that?
I think that we can't.
Or if... Here we go. Very good.
Do you see the presentation?
Wonderful technology.
Okay. Then we may start.
Yes. Hello, dear audience. We are representatives of Daugavpils Secondary School number 9 from Latvia. We would like to present you a brief speech about accessible ways to lead a sustainable lifestyle in our country and how it might help. Our everyday choices and decisions affect the environment more than we think, which is why it's essential to be aware of basic methods of environmental protection. In Latvia, there are several specially protected areas, natural parks, and reserves which are made to protect the endangered species, such as black storks, woodcocks, otters, common cranes, and others. On top of that, in Latvia, we have an annual event called Liela Talka, which means the big clean up. It has been held since 28, and in 2015, more than 175,000 people took part in it. The amount of waste collected being around 1,943.62 tons.
Currently, more than 60% of Latvian population is involved in waste sorting. Public places are provided with containers for sorting different kinds of waste, such as paper, glass, plastic, as well as batteries and metal waste. This is led by the organization Latvijas Zaļais punkts. There is also an organization called Zaļā josta, which means green belt, that is encouraging people to consider waste sorting and being responsible with nature in general. Our residents are also taking action to reduce the energy consumption. 87% of Latvian population have taken measures to improve energy efficiency in their houses, according to the survey carried out by a local energy-saving company, Electrum. Also, there is a voluntary youth organization called Fridays for Future Latvia, who recently took part in leading the event called March for Future, or Gājiens Nākotnē, the purpose of which was to make the politicians and mass media of Latvia pay attention to climate crisis, which undoubtedly affects our country as well. To conclude, there are many ways to help the environment in Latvia. Our residents can consider waste sorting, energy consumption reducing, as well as participating in eco-activism in order to make difference. And that is something that anyone is able to do. That is the end of our speech. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this presentation. Very well done, guys. Thank you for all your colleagues here from Faenza. So now we have talked about nature protection, about waste, very important. We will go back to this concept later. You've talked about energy, very good. And you've talked about your direct implication, your direct participation in expressing your agreement or disagreement in national politics, basically. So very well done, because this is very focused on our meeting today. So I will now give the floor to our German friends. Good morning.
First of all, good morning. I'd like to go back to the question again, the difference between a rumor and information. I think we get a lot of information from the medias, and often we only get a small part of it. And it's still the truth, but it's just a small part of the truth, and we don't get the whole context and the whole picture of it. And I think this makes a big difference. And sometimes it's actually not a rumor, but it's a truth, but you only get to see a part of it. And I think it's important that we see the whole picture of the truth. So now the second thing I'd like to talk about is on global warming, whether this is a real issue for us and whether this is covered enough by the media. So we think that global warming is important for everyone because obviously it does affect everyone. And also we have seen so many natural catastrophes happening in the recent years. We see floodings, we see heat strokes. And I think it's just very important for us to spread this awareness. And also only being aware is not enough. I think we also need to start to taking actions as individuals after we are aware of this problem?
What we also would like to talk about is the future of energy, especially for the European countries, and what kind of energies would prevail after for a longer time, which are sustainable. And first of all, I would like to say that the presentation given by Mr. Andrea, I agree with the presentation that nuclear energy is not a good form of energy and it should, in some sense, be stopped. However, the current technologies that we have in relation to solar power or wind energy or harvestation of, well, say, let's say hydropower, these energies are very inefficient. And before we sort of take that large step of converting everything into a renewable source of energy using solar power or the other examples, we should try to use, we could use nuclear energy as a form of stepping stone to use it instead of using coal and oil. So, because, well, it's not the best, but it is a better option to those. And as I already mentioned, I really think that the renewable energy has a large promise for the long run. However, we still need to develop these technologies and make them very efficient before we sort of just transition to them. And that's what we think from Germany.
Thank you so much for your intervention. So I have heard, I have to admit that we're all, I'm the only one who's not wearing the mask because I'm very far from my audience here, but you are correctly wearing a mask. I have to admit that it's not always easy to understand everything you're telling, but I've noticed that you focused your intervention about global warming and about the concept of taking action about it. So thank you so much again. We will try to go back to this concept all together later on. So now we go back to Italy, from where we are talking. For your friend in Latvia, Poland, and Germany, you have to know that here there are 3 different schools in presence. Not all the school, of course, some representatives, students from 3 different schools. So as they are far more than you are, guys, in the virtual room, here they are 25, if I'm not wrong. So, of course, they will intervene just a little bit more than comparing to you. And now they can choose who's gonna talk if you prefer. I think that somebody among you have prepared some short speech as your colleagues have done. So I give you the floor to your Italian friends.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to start from a crucial topic in our democracy, how to get informed. So in the past, the problem was that there were few means, they were expensive, so just a small group of people were actually informed. Today, especially with the advent of the internet, being informed is way easier. However, the problem that I have run into in my life experience are mainly 2. The first one is about having the desire of being informed, and this is terribly and often missing among the youngest, and I actually don't know why. The second one is misinformation. As everybody can access the internet, misinformation is widespread and getting disinformed is way too easy. So my first advice is don't surf the internet if you're not able to recognize what is true, what is fake. Don't base your arguments on unreliable sources. And in addition, I also think that newspaper firms are not 100% impartial sources. I mean, they are companies. Their goal is to make a profit, not to give us a partial view of the news. So I guess the best way to being informed is by yourself, by going to the field or gather information from those who live there. And by the way, I would like to ask our Polish friends, Lena, or I don't know, if what they think about the situation at your border, if I can ask. Why is it still stuck? What is the real situation? What do you feel as a Polish citizen? So if you can, if you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that, thank you. Your name?
Alex, sorry. My name is Alex Timoncini.
Alex. Thank you, Alex. Very interesting. And I think that as you have asked a direct question to our Polish friend, we can give the word to them and listen to their answer.
Just if you want, of course. Yeah.
Passiamo un attimo ai polacchi per sentire se...
All right, I suppose.
From...
Okay. So I like... Oh, sorry. No, sorry.
Just a sec.
All right, so the question is a bit of a surprise, but the topic of what is actually happening at our border, I think it's a good example of why information is important and why it is important to have it, because as of now, the amount of it that we have as regarding the events that are currently happening there is very limited, and it is very difficult and has been very limited by the actions that our government has taken there. And it is very difficult, as it has been stated before, to differentiate between what is a rumor, what is true, and what is false, what really is happening there. And I think this might have been a mistake to limit the presence of say credible sources of information there, because now no one really knows what is currently happening there. No one is able to correctly assess the events that are taking place there, and it is a very uncomfortable situation personally for me, because I cannot really say how I don't really know how I feel, because I have no idea what is really happening there, and there's no as of now, because it's the way I see it. I think the presence of the media will finally be allowed because of some legal stuff that needs to. Because there's a legal requirement that the situation cannot be as it is anymore. But as of now, I feel a little bit underinformed as to what really is happening there, and I really do not like that.
Thank you so much for your... Thank you. Despite the distance, we are able to share some interaction. It's not absolutely easy to understand each other with the distance, but it's good to have this kind of interaction with question coming from here and answer arriving from there. I think that there is a German student that hasn't intervened. If he wants to share something from from Germany, no? Is there a German student that wants to intervene? We can give you the floor now. Good morning.
Good morning to you too.
Guten Tag.
Yeah. So, I think an important question is the question on demonstrations on the topic of climate change, because I think demonstrations are a very critical point demonstrations are very interlocked with the different topics, especially of information, since I've made the experience that going to demonstrations was the starting point of getting politically informed. Of course, as my colleague from Italy said, there is no source that is impartial. Information is always conveyed with an intention. And I think demonstrations are no different than that, but it's a very good starting point. And I think demonstrations have done a lot to gain media attraction to a certain topic, especially to the topic of climate change, thanks to Greta Thunberg and the whole Fridays for Future demonstrations. There has been a global highlight on the topic of climate change and how it affects the youth, because I think the youth is generally very concerned with their future, which is of course their right. And I think it's a big problem that due to the corona crisis, there's been a lack of media attraction towards climate issues, and that especially here in Germany, a lot more far-right demonstrations regarding the mandates for masks and regulations have been taken, that the climate crisis has been put into the background. And I think we've solved a lot of crises as Europe. We've solved the 2008 financial crisis. We're trying to solve the corona crisis. And I think that we don't have the same attitude regarding the climate crisis, which is far bigger and far more important for the future, not only of Europe, but the whole Earth. And I think that there needs to be a lot of protest, a lot of media attraction due to that, for Europe to work as one, tackling the climate crisis.
So if I may ask, if I correctly understand, the essential meaning of your intervention is that you are quite optimistic about our capability of passing through this crisis, the climate crisis, which is, as you said, far bigger than other crises, but as we have learned in the past, we are able to interact in order to solve the crisis. Am I correct?
I think one of the biggest differences between solving, for example, the corona crisis and the financial crisis as to the climate crisis is that the climate crisis, as it's going on, is still profitable. Companies still make money, and especially with greenwashing, they use the climate crisis to make more money without making an actual change. And the financial crisis and the corona crisis have had a critical impact on the global economy. So it's always been the highest of highest importance for nations to solve this in order to stabilize the economy. And since the climate crisis isn't affecting our economy as much, I think there needs to be action from the people in order for the governments to take action.
Thank you. Action from the people. So I would like to come back here in Italy to our Italian students. Alex said something. Alex, no? Said something very interesting about information and misinformation, because indeed our focus is about energy. But the problem in democracy, inside democratic system, and far more outside the democratic system, is that, as our German friend just said, we can take action, only if we have a correct understanding of what's going on out there in the world about economic crisis in 2008, or more in general in a environmental crisis like the one we are facing. And the difficulties is that to be rightly and correctly and informed in a transparent way, it's not always easy. So I would like to ask to any one of you, somebody here in Faenza, what do you think about the specific problem that raised Alex concerning the trustability of newspaper? He said that newspaper cannot be always impartial because they are owned by trust groups or etc. I would like to have your thoughts about this problem. Do you feel that the information you're receiving in your everyday life is trustable? A difficult question. I will share some thought of mine later on, but if somebody...
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tommaso Graziani. I'm from Italy, of course. Well, I think that what Savorani said is pretty interesting because I think that all those crises are from a bigger crisis, a value crisis, because all those problems are from issues that man created, and then they were transposed through the world, of course, because we are in a globalized world. And then I think that these values crisis affects democracy, affects the environment, and of course it affects the world. Then I want to say that I think that nowadays there is a big lack of political representation. Because if we take into consideration the French situation, that is the new elections in 2022, they're going to be the presidential election in 2022 in France, and the fact there are 4 candidates and they've got all the same ideas from right to far right. Like for example, Zemmour is from is in far right, and Macron is center right. I think there's a lack of democracy because if the citizens are forced to vote for someone who doesn't represent them, I think there's a lack of democracy because the values are not spread in a good way by the newspaper, and nobody cares about how they inform themselves. So I think we should think about how we inform and how a newspaper is correct, because as Alex said, they are companies. They have to attract their customers, the ones who read the newspaper. So I think we got a big problem of values first, then all the crises and problems that comes from these crises are secondary. But first we got a value crisis. Then I thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting. Basically, I can resume your intervention in 2 main concepts. One is representativity, which is crucial in every democratic system. And it's very interesting because within the European Union, within the European family, let's say, we have got a very large range, different kind of representativity in our democracy. Probably France, it's the let's say, the less representative system with, on the other hand, a lot of stability. And we here in Italy, we are probably on the opposite side with far more representatives. We've got traditionally and historically a lot of small parties, so that a lot of people can be represented. But on the other hand, we have a lack of stability. So it's very interesting. And the second point, again, is about, can we trust the media, the big media groups? So this, of course, is the big frame in which we are talking today. Anyway, I would like to put this kind of problem in the core, in the heart of our focus, which is energy, sustainability and energy. So I'm proposing that, is there somebody that have answered to one of the questions that I shared with you as you touched the matter and the issue of the next French presidential election, which is crucial in Europe, and I will share something with you if we have time about the structure of the European Union, which is basically based on two main countries. One, our friends from Germany, and the other is France. Let's say that I was going to tell you later on in another picture that basically in Europe we've got a father and a mother. The father is Germany and the mother is France. Unfortunately, they're a very good tandem, but they're not always agree. And energy is the main issue that divides France and Germany, and that will be a focus of what I'm going to try to tell you later. But I would like to ask you if somebody has answered the question about, the question was, I read you the question clearly. Among the forms of energy, you know, which do you think will be the predominant one in the future of Europe? What type of energy would you like Europe to prioritize in its future? So as we just talked here, if somebody from far away, from Germany, Poland, or Latvia, wants to answer very shortly to that question, I would give floor for you. Please raise your hand if you want to answer, so it will be easier to give you the word. And later, if possible, I'm proposing you to answer to that question too here in Faenza. Germany wants to speak.
Yes. As I've already talked a little bit about what the different forms of energy hold promise are, for example, solar and wind. I would just like to say that wind energy or hydropower and solar energy do hold promise, and they will, in my opinion, be very widespread across Europe in the future. As I said, these are not efficient right now, but if we make them efficient enough, we can use it not only in Europe, but maybe worldwide as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So here we go back to Italy. Of course,
So we've spoken about sustainability and sustainable energy and everything. And as you said, in probably 1,100 years, we will not be able to live here anymore. But I'm asking, why people just speak about sustainable energy and like we try to save ourselves by trying to save by the climate problems and every problem we have, but we're just running from the problem. Like, we're not finding a real solution. Like, why do we invest on finding sustainable development things instead of trying like a new solution, like trying a new house, trying to find a new house? Why do we invest on sustainable energy and we do not invest on maybe living on another planet?
Okay, very interesting intervention. Thank you. Trying to find a new house.
Yeah.
What do you think about this, guys, here in the room? Do you have some idea? I mean, this is really an astonishing proposition, which actually has been a very old thought in human history. We got somebody that is going to answer.
Good morning. I'm from Liceo Torricelli Ballardini, and I think that first of all we have to take care of our house, the planet, and second of all, if our house will break down, we will have to search for another planet. Thing that we are already doing, I think. So first of all, taking care of our planet, searching for new possibility, new electricity. I think that what we are investing in is electricity, and it emits less pollution. It it doesn't pollute the air, and so on. And also, we are investing in water. I think, for electric cars and so on. So I think that what the previous guy said is not the best thing, in my opinion, because if we run away from our planet, I think that we are putting aside our values, because our house is this planet and we have to take care of it. I think.
Thank you so much. We try to give the word to somebody else. The discussion is very interesting, and I think that your provocation is absolutely stimulating. You want to say something? We have a short time, but I will be available through my email, so that you won't go on asking questions or want to have some information, specific information, you can go on. Now we try to share. I please you to speak louder, very loudly, so that everybody can hear.
So good morning. As far as we're talking today about European democracy and about climate change, I would like to put these two themes together in a question. First of all, I wanted to ask to our German friends if they were able to exercise their right to vote in this year's elections, as I know that in 4 Länder you can also vote starting from 16 years old. And also, I wanted to ask them what's their opinion on the new government formed by the Ampelkoalition, SPD, Die Grünen, and FDP, because I know that they have some ideas on climate change they want to apply.
Thank you so much. So as we have, before giving the word to our German friends to answer those two questions about the vote in Germany and about the attitude of the new government concerning climate change, trying just to organize the intervention, I would say that maybe we can have, after the answer, a last couple of intervention here, 2 person. Okay. So try to decide 2 persons that are going to intervene, and then I will take the word back. So the German student, what do you think about the vote in Germany? I mean, what do you think? Have you voted yet? And what about the new government concerning climate change and sustainability and energy?
Yeah, even though we're not allowed to vote yet because we're not old enough yet. But on the new government, I think first of all, it's a bit weird to not have the CDU again because it's been there for such a long time. It's just the starting of a whole new era. And the new AMPU coalition has promised a lot of climate goals. They want to do a lot. But at the same time, they couldn't tell us where the money comes from because they tell us that they didn't want to raise taxes. So I think they have a lot of goals, but they didn't really present us a specific way how they want to pursue these goals. So I think they had great ideas, but those are not that realistic. Yeah.
Thank you. So we go back here. You can I say something about, of course.
I wanted to say something about how to produce energy.
Close to the microphone.
How to produce energy. For me, build a solar panel is a good thing, but can resolve the problem because the earth is needed to produce food, because there is another bigger problem that is the human hungry. I can say that. So for me, a solution is the nuclear power. Scientists are creating a new method to produce energy. It's not because there are two methods of nuclear power, the fission and the fusion. The fission is what is our method, is nowadays method, as I can say, and is based to split the atom into parts, and this produces nuclear waste that is dangerous for human being. But the scientists are researching in another method, that the fusion. It doesn't create nuclear waste and is more clean. It produces more energy and is used, and the sun use this method to produce solar energy. And for me, is a better method.
It can be a good solution.
Because it's easy to protest for the climate, but for me, it's better to find a solution. All are good to protest. And that's what I mean.
Thank you so much. What's your name?
Maverick.
Maverick. Thank you, Maverick. I think that Maverick raised one of the main issues that I would have, that I loved to talk about, which is exactly the connection between energy and democracy, and a specific kind of energy. So I try to resume. We got another intervention. Just be a little bit patient from Latvia, Poland, and Germany. Your colleague is going to talk now. Can you put out the mask and talk loudly?
Okay. Hi, I'm Bianca from Liceo Torricelli Ballardini, and I would like to go back to the previous question about newspapers and whether or not it's a trustworthy source. So the main problem would be journalists can't write articles without inserting their own judgment. And while talking about this issue with our class during the project about Europe, we realized how nowadays young people have a hard time actually being interested in a subject enough to find reliable sources, so to document themselves on numerous pieces. This, I think, is because social network, we were talking about it earlier, stimulates us constantly. And so we find shallow pieces of information, even about the energy and about climate change. We tried thinking about what we know and what we don't know. But the problem is we always just, see a headline and think, okay, this is one thing, and then we don't actually document ourselves on whether or not this is a rumor or a piece of information. So what we should work on first as young people is probably finding ways to actually document ourselves and then think about solutions.
Very good thoughts. Thank you for sharing. You have raised some crucial question about what we're talking about. I think that we have time for another intervention. I'm trying to take notes about what you're saying, and I will integrate it in my thought later.
Hello, everybody. I'm Flavio Liverani. I would like to say something about information, especially fake news. I don't know if someone already said that because it's really difficult to hear from down there. And I would like to say that, for example, fake news, many times we do not realize how much this could be dangerous for our society and for our democracies. For example, many times, especially parties or, for example, extremist parties uses this fake news to spread hate against minorities. And for example, like as fascism and Nazism did in the past, they used like fake news against many minorities to take the power in their countries. And yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Flavio. Thank you so much. So, I think that we had a lot of good thoughts, a lot of good points that can be used to go on with our sharing of thought about what is information, how can we deal with the strictly connected to the power of energy. You have mentioned the problem of trust to the media. So, Marco, can you go to the 6th slide, the next one that was following? Bravissimo. So let's gonna read something very, very clear and easy about what is the news, because you have just somebody within you have just said we only see a headline, and this is the main problem. The main problem today is what I was talking to you at the beginning, quoting Stefan Zweig. The main problem for us comparing to information and understanding of the surrounding world is time. We do not have enough time because everybody asks to us to have an opinion about everything, react fast, and the news are constantly coming to us. But let's start to define the difference between a news and something else. A news, it's an event confirmed by at least 2 separate and independent sources. This is crucial. And it is about journalism. What is journalism? Journalism is making the difference between a news, so something that is not necessarily true in an absolutely way. Somebody, Alex, I think, was talking before about truth. A news not have to be necessarily an absolute truth, but it have to be verified. And the difference within a news and a rumor is that a rumor can be spread millions of times. And it tends to become, we tend to believe that it's true because it is repeated times and times through, for example, the social media. So basically, the social media can not, they do not do always like this, but they tend to act as a producer of propaganda sometimes. A propaganda is when you repeat something, regardless it is true or fake, and because of the fact that you're repeating it, it becomes a sort of truth, and people believe in it. Journalism tried to do something completely different. You say something, you see something. You don't report it immediately. Before reporting it, reporting meaning sharing it, you try to verify if somebody else, from another point of view, in an independent way, have seen, have felt, have witnessed the same event, the same sentence even. So this is a crucial difference between journalism and just spreading information. And it is strictly connected with the concept of trust. Can we trust the media organization? Yes, we can. Because, not because I am Obama, but because why do you decide to work as a journalist? Basically, because you ask to yourself a lot of questions and you feel the need to go in the field, as somebody within you was telling, and try to find the real answer. But because of the fact that in human society, there are a lot of people that want to do this, a lot of people who are very engaged to try to understand what's going on around them. Quite often, these kind of people took the path of journalism. So, it is not because the big media are very often owned by economic groups that they are not trustable. But you have to know from who they are owned. Let's make a very easy example with the Italian press. In Italy, we have a very big and historic newspaper, which is called Il Sole 24 Ore. It is something like the Financial Times. Il Sole 24 Ore, it's, let's say, to simplify, the voice of the owners of big companies. Let's simplify it like this. So, if you read the news on that newspaper, it's not that you don't have to believe it. You just have to be aware that in some way they talk for a layer of the society which indeed have some interest. Okay? The main thing is knowing the source of your information. Because nowadays information is arriving to you out of your choice. You have to choose the information. This was one of the important things that I wanted to tell you. So today we are living and experiencing a lack of trust towards institutions in general and media in particular. Let's go back to our main issue, which is what energy and democracy and information has to do the one to the other. Marco, can you go to the next slide, please? Today we deal with the problem that you all have talked about, which is global warming. Nowadays, for example, we tend to call it climate change. Climate change, it's not a good way to define the global warming. because climate change, I mean, the climate is changing, okay, we can adapt to it. No, we cannot adapt to it. What is happening, it's that the temperature of our Earth is increasing. So global warming, let's convene that it's the most correct way to define what is happening. So as we in Europe, we got a very old industry system, but we also have a very old democratic system. We are one of the entity, geographical and social and political entity that is reacting to this all around the globe. We are trying to give the lead to change things. So the priority for the European Union is react to global warming. And how do we react to global warming? We react to reducing greenhouse emissions. Greenhouse are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous dioxide, and these kind of gases that exist in nature, but they are trapped. Usually they are trapped in the soil or in the ice. And because of human activities, they spread in the atmosphere and the temperature goes up. So you know about this. What have done European Union this year in 2021 to act? European states signed an agreement to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and a 55% cut in greenhouse gas emission by 2030. What does it mean? We agreed all together that within 2050, we have to be carbon neutral. We don't have to put more gases, carbon gases in the atmosphere. But we can go there just step by step. So by 2030, we have to cut our carbon emission, greenhouse gases, by 55%. How do we get there? How can we do it? We were talking about different kinds of energy, and in parallel, we were talking about a sort of couple of heads that we have in Europe, in the European Union. France on one side and Germany on the other side. In that picture that I took at the Élysée Palace, which is the house of the French president, it was in September, and Angela Merkel, the previous German chancellor, was meeting with Emmanuel Macron. What Germany is doing within the last 10, 15 years, they've decided a path, a way, a strategy concerning energy production. They have decided that they're gonna put not all exactly, but a lot of money in developing the sustainable and renewable energy sources, first thing, and they decided to phase out, to get rid of nuclear power, which our friend was talking about earlier. So by 2022, that is Germany. The closest ally to Germany is France. Now in the screen you can see something in French. Don't be afraid. It's not important what is written, but I'm gonna explain it. But you can see a graphic, very clear. The orange part, this is, let's say that the circle is in some way the total amount of energy we produce, splitted by kind of different energies. How do we produce energy? Around the globe. Around the globe, more or less, we produce 63.9% of energy coming from hydrocarbons, thermic. Basically, we take coal, we take oil, petroleum, we burn it, and through burning it, we produce energy. We know very well that this is the main reason for global warming. Then we got hydraulic, the power coming from the movement of water, like river. We've got the power produced by burning gases, biogases, so waste coming from natural production. We burn it and we have energy. And it is 70% coming from other sources. This 7.4%, it's the one we are more interested in because they are the renewable energy. So basically, Germany is focusing on that very small green part. And then we have the strong orange part, which is nuclear power. Nuclear power around the globe represents more or less 10% of our capability of producing energy. Now, let's have a look what France is doing. You got almost the same color in the next graphic you're looking at, but they are completely different, the data. More than 70% of the energy produced by France come from nuclear power. So inside our European family, and Marco, you can go to the next slide, in order also to connect with your question about the new German government. In our European family, we have this problem. We got Germany, our father, as I was telling you before, that is focusing within many years on renewable energy and who wants to get rid of nuclear power. On the other hand, the closest ally of Germany, which is Paris, is trying to impose nuclear energy all over Europe. What they're gonna do, that was between Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron only. No, it's going on. Even worse, because the new German government is even more convinced than the previous one that we have to get rid of nuclear power. So the two guys, the slide, the two guys, aspetta un secondo, Andrea. I'm gonna let you listen to a very short interaction within Bruno Le Maire, the French economic minister, and Christian Lindner, the new financial minister from Germany. They meet each other a couple of days ago, 5 days ago in Paris, and we asked them. It was the first meeting between them since the new German government have taken place with Olaf Scholz as a chancellor. And we asked them, what are you going to do about nuclear energy, which divides your strategy, which is a fundamental strategy for all the European Union? What are you going to do about the nuclear power? You see things in opposite ways. And that was the answer. Andrea. Il primo video, quello di due ministri. It's very short.
Well, it's a difficult debate, as you know, and you mentioned the political context. And so, at the moment, there are talks between the French and the German government and the European Commission, and I'm sure we will find a good solution for all sides.
Ich würde sagen auf Deutsch, das bleibt ein weites Feld. I think we will keep that question for the dessert. Once we will have drunk together, and then we will find a compromise.
So, just in case you haven't heard very well what the answer was, the Christian Linder, he was very serious. He admitted that this debate is very difficult about nuclear energy, and I am sure that the debate will lead us to a solution. It's like saying nothing. It's a non-answer. Because they know very well this is a big problem within the European Union. And Bruno Le Maire, it was more brilliant, and he made a joke, basically. He said, let's leave this question for the dinner, for the dessert. We will have some glass together, and then we will find a solution. Again, it's like a non-answer, meaning that it's highly probable that our European global strategy, European common strategy to reduce greenhouse gases by 2050 will walk on two different legs. On one side, we will have France continuing producing nuclear power, the more they can, because they have got 57 nuclear power plants all over the country. It means that nobody in France is living farthest than 150 kilometers from a nuclear reactor. 75% of their power is produced by nuclear reactor. And on the other hand, we will have Germany focusing on the renewable energies, but also on gases. Gas coming from Russia. So why nuclear energy? And I try to speed up a lot. You can go to the next slide, Marco, please. Why you have to be aware that the debate, the previous one, you have to be very aware that the debate about energy is crucial, and that nuclear power is particularly important, referring to the transparency debate about democracy. Because I think that everybody here and there in Poland, Latvia, and Germany, you all know about Chernobyl. Somebody don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about Chernobyl? Everybody knows about the accident that occurred in 1986 in the ex-Soviet Union. It's one of the most big nuclear power accident in history. So nuclear power is something that scares a lot because of the accident. But somebody here in the audience talked about it before. The main problem about nuclear energy, and Marco, you can go on with the 2 or 3 slide following. Yeah, just to show you, you're looking at some very important pictures. These pictures have never been published anywhere. They have been taken from Oleg Veklenko, a Belarusian guy, a photographer, that was called to Chernobyl to clean up the debris of the accident. And this picture, I know I have this picture because he shared this picture with me when I interviewed him 5 years ago. So the debate about the best power that we can use to reduce greenhouse gases has got the big problem of dealing with accident, and Chernobyl, first of all. But what is the really main problem about nuclear power is the waste, nuclear waste. By producing, somebody was talking about the passage from the fission I mean, producing nuclear power by breaking an atom in two parts. That's how it works since the beginning of nuclear power until today. The big change, the major revolution would be if we can take two atoms, put them together, and that operation, that process, would give us basically infinite power without producing nuclear waste. The problem is that that would be the solution, for sure. That's why all the physicians are very engaged in finding that solution. The problem is that within the beginning of time of nuclear power, all physicians of the world are working on that solution. And I interviewed one of the most important nuclear physicians in Italy some years ago, and he was telling me, in the 50s, 70 years ago, we, the physician, we were all convinced that we would have need 30, 50 years to be able to generate power from the fusion, okay? In the 50, they were telling, in 50 years, we will be able to produce energy by putting atoms together. There won't be nuclear waste, and we will have clean power. If you ask to the physician community today, in 2020, how far we are from that solution, from the solution to be capable of producing energy through the fusion, they will answer the same answer within 50 years. So today, we have the research going on in that direction, but we are not able to produce clean power from the atom's energy without producing waste. Waste, as you all know, nuclear waste is radioactive, so it can be very dangerous, and it has to be put in a safe place. That's how the debates, the democratic debates, get involved. Because, and we can go to the next slide, we have to know, in democratic society, we have to know what happened. Actually, it would have been the next one again, okay? And the next one again. Okay, that was what I've just resumed to you. You have nuclear power. During the production cycle, you have two problems. On one side, there can be an accident, but this is not the focus of the question, because if you are afraid of an accident, you don't take a plane. Basically, you can stay home if you are afraid of an accident. The problem is that this kind of power produces waste. Any kind of power has got problems. Oil power, coal power, they are the kind of power that produce the problem we are facing. But nuclear waste has got a specific problem. They go on being dangerous for thousands of years. So, the matter in democracy is as follows. You have to be correctly and rightly informed about the situation you're facing. If you know in a transparent way what you're facing, you can deal with it. For example, you can choose to have a nuclear power in Faenza or in your city, if you know what is the possible danger, what is that you're risking, let's say, you will have compensation. For example, this has been the policy in Germany for many, many years. If you leave aside a nuclear power station, the state gives you all the facility you need because you're facing a risk, an healthy risk. The problem is that, and that's a problem you have to deal with, you youngest people, about information. because this information I'm talking about, it is in the media. The world is full of journalists looking at this kind of problem. For example, how do we deal with waste, the waste of nuclear? And here we can look, Andrea, to a very short video.
Mike Townsley a participé à toutes les campagnes contre les rejets de déchets radioactifs en mer.
On est allé dans une zone très profonde de la Manche, un endroit qui s'appelle la fosse des Casquets, juste devant La Hague, entre La Hague et l'Angleterre, dans une zone de pêche, tout près des plages.
Qu'avez-vous trouvé là-bas?
Des fûts de déchets radioactifs rouillés, des fûts éventrés, des fûts vides. On peut voir la vie sous-marine, des poissons vifs dans les barils radioactifs. Alors la question qu'on se pose, c'est où sont passés les déchets radioactifs? Les déchets sont dans la nature.
Okay, it's very short. It was with a French sound because it's a French documentary by a journalist called Laure Noila. And what have you just seen? I give you a short, very short description because we are at the end of our time. The guy that you have seen, he's from Greenpeace. You all know Greenpeace. It's a non-governmental organization, ONG. And they went down to the deep water of La Manche, the sea between France and Great Britain, and they filmed the nuclear waste abandoned in the seaside. Why they have done so? Because they knew that since the beginning of the nuclear power, the civil nuclear power, all the nuclear countries in the world do so. The waste, the nuclear waste, were just released in the ocean. That kind of process went on until 1993. So, I mean, yesterday, okay? Why all the big countries in the world, the nuclear countries in the world, stopped this process, throwing the nuclear waste in the ocean? Because they were aware of the risk in terms of Earth, in terms of environment? No, just because an independent ONG, Greenpeace, showed the world what was going on, showed the fish going inside the nuclear waste. It was a big scandal, and within the United Nations, all countries of the world agreed that we have to stop to throw the nuclear waste in the seaside. That was in 1993, so yesterday. So I have to conclude. There were so many things. You can go just, Marco, to slide far. I just make it again. Okay, you can stop there. Because this is a place in Italy, a very important place where we still have all our nuclear waste, most of them, temporarily stocked near Turin. And this temporary stock of nuclear waste goes on within the last 50 years, so it's not that temporary. About Greenpeace, what they have done in that specific example, they have done the job that every kind of journalist have to do. They took a specific problem within a big issue, producing energy, which is necessary. The nuclear waste, it's a big problem without solution until today. And there was a way shared by all the big countries of dealing with nuclear waste, which is dangerous for health and for the environment, and they pointed out the problem, sharing that information with the public opinion. Once the public opinion is aware of the problem, I mean, we can go on, we can discuss, we can have a dialogue. So that's what information have to do. I would like to end our meeting because today, by chance, 18th of December, exactly 1 year ago, a very good Italian journalist, Pietro Greco, died. He was a scientific journalist, and he said, I'm going to quote you something he said. We live in a society in which there is a strong demand to participate in the decision-making process. We all want to participate in the decision-making process, and that's because we are a democracy. This demand is overwhelming. You're not going to stop it. Everyone wants to speak out. But what is the secret of our society if it does not want to fall prey to the winds of demagogy? It is awareness. You have to be aware of what's going on. If we do learn to live with this uncertainty, which means the uncertainty of science. Science is not religion. In science, something is true just for the short period of time until we find that it's not true. So science does not have to be a religion. Science is uncertainty. We have to deal with it. And if we do not learn to live with this kind of uncertainty and continue to make decisions swinging between catastrophism on one side and minimalism on the other, we will end up building a fragile, sustainable future. To tell it in another way, the obligation to accept gives us the right to know. So that's why you have to fight to be rightly informed and, most of all, inform about energy. I had many things more to tell you about these the issues we have been talking about, but our time is finished. So I will just ask you to do not hesitate to send a question by email, or I can give you bibliography, books to read, documentary to see, pictures to look. And thanks you for participating.
Andrea, thanks to you to lead us in this journey. Thanks to your experience and knowledge. Thank to all the boys and girls connected today from Boleslaviec, from Schwäbisch Gmünd, from Daugavpils. Thanks also to our partners that is not with us today, Bergerac. But especially thanks to the students and to the schools, Liceo Torricelli Ballardini, Istituto Alfredo Oriani, Istituto ITIP Bucci, that show us a lot today, spacing from many different topics and showing us knowledge, fluency in English, also a very good pronunciation. So thank you all. Thank you to the teacher, to the students, to the administration. And as city councillor of the city of Faenza in charge of European policies, I thank you all. Thanks to stay with us. Immagino l'Europa così will end up here as this is the final event, but our debate will continue inside the conference of the future of Europe. So thank you all. See you soon. Many greetings from Faenza. Io se posso vi volevo rubare un minuto in più, ragazzi, non abbiamo avuto modo di salutarci prima, io arrivavo direttamente da un altro appuntamento. Vi volevo...